Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Talk About Podcast.
Welcome to the Center for Technological Innovation and Entrepreneurship podcast. My name is Pierre Jean, and today I will be your host. In this episode today, we are going to talk about entrepreneurship, career, and family, the big three. Marta, welcome and thank you for our invitation. So, Marta, can you tell us a little bit about you, your career, personal insights? We would like to know more about Marta.
Hi, Pierre. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. It's a really honor. So a little bit about myself. So I'm Portuguese, born and raised in Lisbon. I studied at Nova SBE management. When I finished my course, I went to London. Actually, I had done an internship on the last year at Credit Suisse, and they made me an offer at the end. So when I finished my degree, I went straight to London to work at Credit Suisse in the capital markets division. I was there for around 10 years, having relocated in the meantime between London, Madrid, and then finally Lisbon. When I came to Lisbon, I started getting more and more involved in the innovation space, and I started angel investing in early stage startups with a big focus in fintech, because obviously it was my background. That really was what unlocked, I would say, the next stage of my career, coming with close dialogue and connection with early stage entrepreneurs. I loved it. It's really a privilege. Anyone that invests in early stage startups, I think will tell you this. You meet a lot of really great people building the future. So that's really inspiring. And that's when after investing in some, you invest has a very early stage, then the next round of funding comes, and obviously what you can help the startup gets more and more minimized. So it was for me when I started feeling I really wanted to, be involved in a startup for the long run, and that's when then I got to build the student finance.
Wow, excellent, thanks. So moving now to what you're currently doing, and tell us about that at student finance. And tell us about this income shared agreement kind of stuff, and how it works, and what's the added value for the students and for the institutions as well. So at Student Finance, what we're doing is building the tech and finance infrastructure to offer income share agreements. And income share agreements are a deferred payment model where students pay nothing upfront for education, and then they pay a percentage of their income once they are employed and earning above a predefined minimum income threshold. What this does is solving, obviously, affordability, right? Because anyone can access the programs, while really aligning the incentives towards student success. And that's really the big innovation that we see behind the model. Because when you offer a success-based model, it aligns incentives, and we are really committed into helping not only on the job placement, but obviously on optimizing your career options, etc. So we put a lot of effort in knowing the job market, into giving our students a lot of insights about the career path and really the options that are available in the market. It's very interesting. So we partner with mostly now with bootcamps in technology and digital skills, but also universities are starting to adopt the model. And it really just, when you offer an ISA, you really trust the quality of the education that you're delivering. And I think that message is very, very powerful. And tell us a little bit, for some people it can be a little bit news for them about this, income shared agreement. Is that something that is widely used in other geographies, perhaps the US or the UK? It's something that is more normal than perhaps here in continental Europe, like France or Portugal or Spain, correct?
Yeah, so the model started emerging more and more in the US. Obviously, the US has a huge student debt problem. And the fact that tuition fee prices over the past decade have massively been increasing is only exponentiating that problem. And so certainly the US is where you're seeing the biggest players coming to the market. Now, the interesting thing is that across the world, you are seeing adoption of this model. I would say that the most innovative education programs that have been coming out, several of them are ISA first, meaning that their main way of accessing that program is through an ISA. And that's very interesting. And we have requests to collaboration from schools really all over the globe. So we are focusing now in Europe, but LATAM, Southeast Asia, etc. So the model is clearly emerging. So it's not something that you would expect any student to know and hear about, but it's becoming certainly a lot more widely known and something that people really want to benefit from.
Okay, and if we want to have more information, we can go to your website, it's studentfinance.com.
.com.
Excellent. So interesting. So you moved from corporate banking, investments. You created and you were part of the funding team for student finance, and you have actually significant experience in corporate banking, venture capital, and it's not only that. I mean, your life is, you also have a family, and you have a family with a mother of 3 kids. Talking now to our perhaps younger audience or the students that are here finishing undergrad or master, it may seem overwhelming, and raising a family, having a job like you have now, and creating your startup. How is that possible? So tell us, what are the tricks or the thing that you've been doing in order to be at this level now, able to manage all of that?
I think the only thing really, to be honest, is knowing your priorities really well. So, obviously whenever you are juggling between an intensive work and family, that's something you need to have on the table, right? For instance, I co-founded Portugal FinTech, which is something that I'm also very involved with, for instance. But I think the main thing is that I really know what fields I want to be involved in, and everything connects. So, the work that I do at Portugal FinTech, the work that I do at Student Finance, the work that I do as an angel investor, they all leverage each other, right? So on that part, they all keep me to move forward and be better on the pack. And I think they really follow my passion, and that's really what I like to do, right? So in a lot of sense, they are not work all the time. They are really things that I really care about and that I really want to be involved with to start with. Putting a family on the mix. Obviously other things get dropped, but just not either the work or the family. Obviously you rest less, you have less free time for other things. But I think it's really a matter of what you prioritize. If this is important, you'll make it work.
And tell us a little bit about that. Actually, I'm super curious. Some people have, a tendency to say, I'm going to reserve these 2 hours, half hour or 1 hour for the family, and from this time to this time, and I'm going to be doing that. So some people are super kind of planned.
Yeah.
Or some other people take that like, okay, now it seems like I have to spend time, with the family because the kids need some help, or, we need to do some activities, and I'm going to do that now. And after I'm going to patch up for work later on. What would be your attitude facing that? You would be more kind of the organized person, you have from 7 to 7:30 I do that, from 8 to 8:30 I do that, or you're the other side of other type of person?
No, yeah. So I follow not a work-life balance, but a work-life blend. So I think it all kind of comes together. I think that, so at Student Finance, we are a remote first company. I think that helps a lot, to be honest, because I'm home. And, the fact that even though I might be working on my office, etc., I think the fact that you're physically around and available makes a big impact. And it's not that I was out of, the house from 8 to 8 or something. So I am around, and that really helps to balance things because, I can totally, when they come from school, I can be half an hour with them and then just, pop up for continue work, etc. but I'm not that organized. So obviously at this stage of student finance, I often work at night and on weekends. But I'll just try to, if work needs to be prioritized because, something urgent, I will obviously do it. Dinner times, etc. Meals are obviously very important, the times that I'm around with them. But it's a balance, and you kind of try to prioritize what needs attention or the most attention at that time. So does that make sense? No?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we talk to different people that have different views. Some people are super strict in terms of the time, and they delegate to the partner what has to be done when they focus on something, etc. Some people do more ad hoc, and it was interesting to hear your view on that.
The only thing that you cannot be, so obviously I'm not a micromanaging mom. I think that would be very, very difficult to obviously conciliate. So I delegate a lot. I obviously have a lot of help with my kids, and I'm fine with that. So you see, like, I don't feel, I don't feel bad or to blame because I don't do some things. I really push for quality time, and obviously when I'm with them, I try to be available. And that's the only thing that it's tricky when you work from home and because you're always on, right? There is not, okay, I'm working and the home is, clear their time, etc. For me, it really works. I know for some people that could be difficult to make both reconcile, but for me it really so I can change between the two very fast, and it's not and to be honest, like, I work a lot with them on the back, and you get used to that noise and that vibe of the house, and it's fine, right? You just get used to your setup. And
does that mean that when eventually one day when the COVID ends, you guys are still planning to work from home?
Yes. So with Student Finance, we did have an office back in the early days, but in reality, almost nobody was going to the office. So, we were very flexible into the remote versus physical. The office has an option, but the truth is the team didn't want to use it. So a couple of months prior to COVID starting to kind of get a bit more deep, we just decided, let's get rid of the office and just assume the remote first. Also, we have a very international team, and it's very hard when you start creating hubs, like you have 60% of the team in one place and then the rest distributed. I think the team dynamics are more difficult. So what we try to do is gather everybody around on a frequent basis. When we gather, obviously, if you need to have a physical meeting, etc., we do. So we do use FeedTech House and we all meet. But we try to, when we gather, our more social things and to develop on obviously the team side and personal side and just being together, and then work we are capable of proceeding on a remote basis.
Interesting, because I also believe that COVID will be kind of not an excuse, but the compelling event that's going to push us to reconsider the way we work. And we still need to meet physically from time to time, but the way we're going to meet may be different. As you said, and you used the word socializing, I think this is what people lack when we're doing the Zoom. And sometimes we need to meet, to get acquainted with new people that join the company and discuss with colleagues, etc. But the way we're going to interact, I also really believe that is going to change and it's here to stay. So I think it's interesting that you share that.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So now let's we have students now that are knocking at the door when we open here, and they tell us, let us know if it's better to start as in the corporate life or as an entrepreneur. Some people have this dilemma. They really love, pushing ideas and being involved in something that's going to solve a problem. But on the other side, they're considering, the importance or all what a corporate career can bring. And this is especially what I'm going to ask you in this question to help people also a little bit get some more insight about this decision. And the point is that, you made your career, as you mentioned, at Credit Suisse, just after leaving Nova SBA, and not as an entrepreneur. But now we see Marta as an entrepreneur. So, and if in the middle, we can say, we look at the family, do you think that, it's perhaps a difficult question, but do you think you would have been able to have such family now, having started as an entrepreneur, or do you think the corporate life privileges perhaps, or give opportunities for more raising a family? Is that more easier, or what do you think about that in terms of your choice, corporate, entrepreneur, and if you want to have a family or grow a family, how do you see that?
Yeah, let me start just by saying, when I left university, entrepreneurship was not that big thing. So it was not something that we were even highly exposed to when I finished university. Just to start with, I know, I think you guys are doing an amazing job on that and really showing that there is actually a very wide opportunity range in different sectors, etc., and really pushing for people to know entrepreneurship and really understanding what they can do there. That didn't exist when I finished. And so banking was very hot, and it was very intense. It was not that you see, when you say Credit Suisse, it was not that I was opting for a corporate life, because it was a very intense life as well, right? So, but I see where you're going into the commitment of working for somebody else or starting your own company. It's very different. And we need to assume this, right? There is a big commitment taking place, and you take a job, 2 years after you change your mind, you want to pursue something else, you can, right? When you start a company, people are obviously, you're hiring people, you're raising money, etc. And people are counting on you to deliver on what you planned and what you promised, and obviously that entails a very big commitment and responsibility. Saying this, I think there are certainly benefits to both. I think when you should go and be an entrepreneur when you really find what sparks you. Because I think, just choosing to be an entrepreneur because you want to be an entrepreneur will not work. It's extremely difficult. It's, there is a lot of responsibility, pressure to deliver very fast. You do work a lot, to be honest. I worked a lot at Credit Suisse, but I think the time of my life where I work the most is by far now at building student finance, because you need to do everything, right? Building a company in the early stage, you need to wear so many hats. You need to do everything, right? Because when you get to the stage where you raise a couple of funding rounds and you're actually happy, to have a team of 20, 30 people, there is a lot of work that has been done at the beginning, and you really need to do it yourself. The early team really needs to take care of that. So there is that part of the equation. But if you really found what you want, the problem you want to solve, and something you want to dedicate yourself to, I think that's great. If you haven't, I think you should go and, either work for a startup and have that feel. Because what I was optimizing when I started my career was for learning. Now, at the stage of my career I'm actually optimizing for impact, which is very different. I think when you start your career, you should 90% out of 100 times optimize for learning. You really, at the beginning of your career, that's really the stage that you need to be exposed to a lot, which a lot of times is not what you get from a corporate job. You see, so even working in a startup or going for an industry where you will have that high learning exposure is what I would privilege the most, versus entrepreneur versus corporate when I'm making that choice. Now I'm just going to the second part of your question, which was obviously, and I speak with a lot of young women that do make these questions, to be honest, which is is this compatible? I think we are selling the message that entrepreneurship and families are not compatible, which I totally disagree, and I think it's a message we really need to kill ASAP. I think what we need to be clear about is commitment, right? When you are building a company, when you are an entrepreneur, the commitment you're making is very different. I don't think anybody, entrepreneur or not, can be successful if you're not fitting your other priorities, right? And I think this is equal for women and men, right? If you really want a family and you feel that you cannot fulfill that because you made a commitment to a startup, eventually that will crack. So you need to make your top priorities compatible. And if a family is your top priority, you need to make both work. I know that investors, and I would say the community in general, might put a lot of pressure and make people feel. So a lot of times I think people probably want to start a career but feel that they shouldn't, or that they can't, or obviously that will compromise the commitment. And that is what I think we should address. Will that compromise the commitment or not? Not the motherhood or not, because personally, I like, at least nobody was ever upfront with that with me, that I have 3 kids, right? And so obviously it's clear that that is a priority for me, and that I also allocate time to that, right? And nobody ever questioned my capacity as a founder because I have 3 kids. So then that leaves me to question then what is our issue with people having kids, right? Is it the maternity leaves? Is it the fact that people will be out and that we fear that time out means they will be less committed, or a change in commitment? I think that is what we need to address. And so to anyone that wants to start a company and still have a family, I just think we need to be very upfront about this, and just, we can be committed at both. I clearly am committed to both, right? At my family and at my company. So, if you need to be out for 2 or 3 months, you just need to communicate that in a very positive way, and that will not change your commitment. But just knowing that as an entrepreneur, you cannot just, one day call someone and just say, I'll be out for 6 months. That doesn't work. Which doesn't mean that it's not compatible with a family. But you just need to know that. But I also feel that if you are highly committed and involved into your company, I find very unlikely that you would leave for 4 months and just disconnect. Mm-hmm. You need to balance, but I think they are highly compatible, and people need to understand they are and need to be. And this is the same for women and men, right? You have an amazing career and a family, and we all need to make this work. It's not only women. So, we need to, I would take really the pressure off maternity leaves and just putting the focus on commitment and making sure that everybody's aligned, that commitment exists, right?
This is an amazing reflection. I mean, I like that, because I think some people may assume that being, a woman, that you will be only committed to your family, perhaps, and you're going to leave other commitments on the second level. What you're saying is different. I mean, because you can have both commitments together and achieve amazing things on the entrepreneurship level and still be an outstanding, mother. So, which is interesting. And I also believe that if you set your priorities and you true with yourself in terms of, being committed to your work, but also your family, you will arrange the two. And this is something that perhaps we need to discuss more and share more. That because there's perhaps the expectation that if you're a woman, if you go to maternity leave and you raise the kids, you're not going to be available as you were available before 100% for your venture, which is something that is not correct. Okay.
Because that's an idea. And people, we have this bias because we have that idea, and we have the idea that women will change after maternity, and that the priorities will change, and that the commitment will change. And I just question that principle in the first place. I certainly don't feel I fit there at all, and I think a lot of people don't. And I find very dangerous this idea, and I do have these questions and comments from a lot of young women about them feeling that they need to choose. I think that's really terrible because they are compatible. And same thing, like a man entrepreneur can lose commitment by an amount of reasons, right? Like the things that now, because we really put maternity leave in a bucket that, okay, now she will change. And this, to be honest, is not only entrepreneurship. This happens in the corporate world as well. People assume like, okay, she will not come the same. And that's just very wrong. And I think it's very unfair, to be honest.
I think these discussions should happen as well in front of a class of students that, that about to choose for a job or going out for, to find their first job. Because I think this question, it's not only for it's for women, but it's not only for women in terms of commitment, etc. I think it would be interesting to discuss that live with students, okay, to debunk a little bit.
No, absolutely. I would love that. I think the point is with entrepreneurship, putting motherhood and paternity aside, is when you are, that is the big, I think the big thing when you are choosing between being entrepreneur and going to work for someone else or taking a corporate job. The big difference is the commitment. And it's a very different commitment. And we need to, that's what I think we all need to be in line with. When you are choosing, you need to know what you're signing up for. And they are very different.
Yeah. Interesting. So I'll take that so far as a highlight on that. Thanks for that. So we discussed a little bit your career, what you've been doing, etc. And again, moving back to, plans, not plans, etc. Do you plan your career? You, Marta, do you plan? I mean, you started with Credit Suisse. We know why. Entrepreneurship was not that big at the time. Banking was hot. You decided to go there. But at some point, you moved to some entrepreneurship, path. So what made you change that? Is that impact? Is that other reasons why you decided to change?
Yeah, so more than saying how do you plan, I'm a little bit susceptible of planning too much, just because I think the opportunities come along if you are open to them as you progress and you mature and you obviously gain more experience in the fields. And I do see a lot of people that are living very unhappy jobs because they are following the plan. And they just stick to, okay, I'm following the plan, and then how that works. Then it's the next bonus, then is the next promotion, then it's the next, and you're trapped into something, and you're following the plan, and then the MBA comes, and then the thing is, that is great as long as you are reflecting along the way that is still the best choice for you at the time and at what you're optimizing for at the time. So I've said before that when I started, I was clearly optimizing for learning, and now I'm optimizing for impact. I do learn a lot, thankfully. But the things that for me, a corporate job was, so the impact that I felt I could have in that kind of job was not at the level that I wanted to, obviously, and that pushed me to move to more entrepreneurial things. But I think that my journey was more that I started understanding more and more what drives me, and I started focusing more on that, to be honest, more than anything. I love finance and investment. I learned a lot at Credit Suisse, but then I started getting into fintech, and that really unblocked, I would say, the second stage of my career. So it was more about, and the opportunities came as I started to build networks and to really kind of get involved into a community around the things that I really liked. Because that's how I see things happening. I started investing, I started actually engaging and meeting a lot of people that were, in line with what I wanted to build next, and then opportunities started unraveling. So if you would have asked kind of Marta, 25 years old, is this an option? I would not have seen it. Yeah. Because at the time, that was not an option. At the time, my network was very different. I was living in London in a very, investment banking life. Those were kind of the tribe that I was involved with was that. And so I was obviously following a path of, okay, I'm growing here internally in this path. And it just changed as I, obviously started focusing more and more about my future and building networks around that. So I think people need to pay a lot of attention to, one, really what they like, and that will change. And that's really fantastic.
I think what is interesting here is that you have the capacity to reflect on what you want based on what is available at the time. So I think instead of perhaps, going into what the current situation and next position, next job position and next things to happen in the system is, perhaps you have this ability to say, this is what I want to do, this is my options. I like that as well. Let's give it a try, even if it's not planned a long time ago, like it's 5-10 years in advance, because we know some people that say, I want to get the general manager of that. I want to get to my ABA after I want to get to another country to be head of a special country, etc. I think this is not your case, but you're able to know, based on what the surrounding is providing you, what you like and what you adding value is, you decide what's going to be next.
But the thing is, you see, like, for instance, because I think I'm in some sense maybe a good example there, because I really like the corporate life. It's not that it's not that I say, okay, no, because some people do that. Okay, I tried the corporate life and that doesn't work for me. I was like, no, I loved it. I loved the time that I had at Credit Suisse, and it was a very extensive time. The thing is that then what I was optimizing for changed. And once you realize that that is no longer the case and you need to changing, it's very tough. And I'm saying this, but when you are, at that period, so I left Credit Suisse and then I was angel investing, and I would frequently, so I was obviously coming from that corporate background, I would frequently have people and tell me, no, but you go to this opportunity in the corporate world. And it was, you see, like, and people that liked me and obviously were trying to advise me in the best way possible. They were not, they really thought that was the best for me, because they didn't understand that I was investing into something else. You see, there was like, oh, okay, but you're there, where is this going? And people fear that might not go anywhere. And they try to influence you with their perspective. So I think what I have managed to do there is stick to what I really felt was the way. And, for me, the clear thing is I wanted a different impact. I was sure I was not going to have the impact and the autonomy and kind of the ability to do things and implement my vision the way I wanted in that corporate world. So, but saying this, it's obviously it's not easy. Being an entrepreneur, it's not easy. Changing when you are in the corporate and you want to make the transition from corporate to entrepreneurship, it's not easy.
And one thing I kind of believe is that we prepare the student for the next 5 to 7, maximum 10 years job, but perhaps we're not very good at telling them that things will change, and you will change as a person, the environment will change, and your priorities will change. And at some point, you're going to have to sit down with yourself and have a piece of paper and see, am I happy? Is that what I want to do, etc. And this, what I would call this transition in our life, happens sometimes, when you get into a family, when you have something happening, etc., or when you decide at some point that, that's it. I gave everything that I had to give to this job. Perhaps I'm not learning the way I would like to learn. I want to do something different. So, long story short is that I think we don't prepare that well the students for this change of segment of life. We prepare them, and perhaps they believe they're going to be always in the banking world, or they're going to be, etc. But we don't prepare them for this reflection time that can be 6 months, 1 month, 1 day, 1 year of, considering what you're doing, what you want to do, and getting to the next step.
Yeah,
and that stuff happens. I mean, you are one of the examples, and we have other examples that people that change from, a specific career to another one. And this moment in the middle is something that is difficult, because you need to choose, It's
and you need to, the thing is that you need to choose, and you really need to trust your instinct, because you don't know you're right. You don't know that that's going to work. You don't know that is going to lead to something successful. Exactly. But that's fine. You see, like, that's fine as long as, you're really sure that you're following what is right for you at that stage, and you know what you're trying to get out of that. Because, like, if that doesn't work and if that doesn't work, you will then see what is the next best thing and what makes sense for you at that stage in your life. But I certainly agree that we don't reflect enough as, a society, but certainly
exactly.
Young people, when they leave jobs, they are going for the first one. They're not thinking, or actually they are thinking too much ahead, right? That is going to be the thing.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for this input. I think it's it's adding a lot of value, providing perspective, to all these people that are hearing, and what may happen, and planning or not planning, or taking advantage of the surrounding and knowing what you want to do. I think this is important. Now going back
and just one small thing about that. And I think at that stage in your life, like the initial 5 years of your career, regardless of what you're doing, you need to try to experiment a lot and get exposure to different things and variations of, even if what you like is finance, imagine my case, right? I'm still in finance. The thing is that, finance has so many hats and so many different perspectives. So even if a high concept where you want to be, but try to, network get exposure, really try, read, etc., different things, because a lot of times you are in one career, but there could be something that was really what would drive you, but just you didn't try it, right? And we just go for what we know. And
yeah. So now, adding to that, and perhaps moving a little bit the needle to another tune is, we would like to provide some perspective to the students that are hearing and the people that's going to be listening, is to try to draw some differences or similarities between the investment world and the entrepreneurship world. So how would you see now, with the perspective you have and the experience, is what would be perhaps similar between entrepreneurship and investment, and what would be perhaps the biggest differences that you would have between these two different worlds?
I think they are completely different, to be honest. Obviously, they intersect a lot, right? And you have, I would find that a lot of times, obviously, the passion that you would find in a VC investor and in a founder about, that field, etc., to be, very deep and very aligned. But the work is completely different, right? So when you are running a fund, your job is like to start with fundraising. Obviously, that's the capital part, and obviously that most often falls to the partners of the fund, not to if you join a VC fund. But imagine someone starts the career, they would do deal sourcing, so they will have that part of engaging with a lot of different entrepreneurs, study the business model, understanding the plans, etc. And then the other stage is, once they make the investments, then having the management. So they will have board meetings, they will have the founders build their vision, etc. But it's most often a very light touch management. So obviously they are involved, but much more on the strategic angles of the investment, where things are going, etc. I would even dare to say that the more involved the VC or the fundee is when things are actually not going that well, right? Because in an ideal world, the VC is kind of giving a lot of guidance, but is not hands-on, the management of the company. When you are an entrepreneur, it's kind of the opposite. You are really hands-on. You need to leverage all the knowledge and all of the network you can have. So I would say that's something that you will certainly push a lot your investors to give you, right? Like, I need to access these, help me get there. Investors do give a lot of credibility to an early stage startup, obviously. So it's very important when you are a founder who you are surrounded by, and so those synergies that you can create with your investors. But your job is to create the vision and execute. So you are on the day-to-day, you are on the hands-on, on the driving wheel of building the company. So I would say they are completely different.
Yeah.
I'm asked often, how do you get into VC? To be honest, this is something that I get a lot. Okay, I want to be an analyst in a VC fund. It's very difficult. To start with, VCs are small teams, typically, so you don't have a lot of open roles available traditionally. And I would say the best thing for you, even if you want to go there, is to really start engaging with the startup community. Because what you need to show to a VC is that you have that network, right? You will be able to, get deal flow. You will be able to get involved, to bring really good investment opportunities. So getting involved with the startup community, knowing the companies, knowing the founders, helping, etc., will get you massively ahead when opportunities emerge on VC funds, because that's what you will need to show that you can bring. If you have zero experience in startup land and you go to a VC fund, it's like, I would love to work here. It's just like, thanks, but you're not adding value. And you really need to, right, to add that.
And tell me one thing, I'm going to go into, in both being an investor and being in entrepreneurship, the person that, as you mentioned, that create the vision and deliver. Do you believe that in both you had night without sleeps, or thinking, it's not going to work, etc.? Or is that more something that is related to, because I believe, and you need to debunk that, is being an entrepreneur, especially at the early stage, you feel the pressure of delivering, and you perhaps missing the structure of corporate and the people working with you, and sometimes it keeps you sleeping at night. It may keep you awake and making the pressure to deliver. Do you think it's only I'm wrong in terms of that being specific to entrepreneurship, and it happens also as an investor, or you think it's the case?
Well, I think, for instance, there are very different things. I think an investor can have sleepless nights when there are, for instance, fundraising, right? It's a high pressure, intense process of obviously getting people to back the fund, etc. Or when something goes really wrong, right? When there is a really big problem going around. But they are more, contained in time, right? They are specific. In an early stage entrepreneur, I think that's continuous, and that's just the definition of having too much to do with very little hands around. So I would say that it's not even that you would stress about, that it's not only the stress around figuring things out, is the amount of things you need to do full stop. It's just like, you just really need to deliver a lot, and that. And it depends if you are, venture-backed or investor-backed or not, but that you will be raising your next round by then. You need to deliver to those KPIs. That you made promises that you would grow at a certain pace, and that is the expectation, right? People invested in you because of that vision, of that expectation, and so And at the beginning, certainly, when you have a team of 10 people with the amount of things you have to do, I think it's very hard not to have that stress. To be honest, that's something so now you see like a lot of people you see around saying, you need to obviously optimize for productivity and efficiency and etc. And you don't need to be busy, so busy. Like I would love that. I still, I still don't know how to do. I'm working a lot, and I'm stressing a lot on the things that I should be doing that I haven't done yet, and that creates stress. Like obviously, I don't know. Hopefully, in some time, I will be better and be able to tell you that you don't have to stress that much or work that much. At this stage, I still do.
I think your feedback and what you're mentioning is aligned with what you hear. I mean, it's the fact that you have so many things to do, that time is limited, and also your resources are limited, and you creating something that hasn't been done before usually is that you don't have a lot of processes in place and people to help you with. I mean, you feel the heat, and the heat is part of this position that you have as an entrepreneur, and being perhaps the voice of the company, and having to do zillions of things at the same time, and still being on track for the calls with the investors and deliver and show that things have been done, etc. So there's a lot of heat.
Yeah, and for me specifically, so I was before I actively angel invested, right? So I was dealing with early stage startups. And now that I'm on the other side, to be honest, I think even dealing with that, and I knew the people and we chat, etc., I had no idea how difficult, to be honest, early stage is, right? When you are really from zero, I think from 0 to 1, on my perspective, but also I come from the corporate world. So for me, when things start getting concrete, probably I deal better with that structure, right? When, things are real, we have clients, we know what we're doing, etc. But the 0 to 1, it's very hard because you're building on a vision, and you really need to get everything to work. And that is a high pressure thing to do, for sure.
Okay, so now at this point, we know about you, your background, what you're doing as student finance. What is student finance? When you did the switch to entrepreneurship from Credit Suisse. Now we would like to go a little bit on one subject that has to do with gender. And as a woman, what we would like to know, and perhaps for the audience as well, is if during your career you face some obstacles because of your gender, and if yes, could you share that with us? And was it something that sometimes was difficult in the career, both as an investor and as an entrepreneur?
So the straight answer is going to be no. To be honest, I never felt there were particular obstacles because of my gender whatsoever. And putting in context, banking when I started was like obviously a highly dominated male environment, etc., etc. But that doesn't mean that there are not things. For instance, when you go on maternity leave and on that year, regardless of your performance, you will not be paid a bonus. That's not fair. You see, like, and that happened to me, but that is because it's not fair. It doesn't mean that I think that was an obstacle, because my approach to that is I'm not willing to give up on, you see, like at that time, I was not willing to give up being a mother because of that bonus. So, you know, it's not fair, but I was fully aligned that that was the choice I was making and was fine, you see, but when I came back, I came back 100%. And that was like that thing of when you really not going to the stereotype that, you know, then you come back and you are not focused, etc. So, you know, and I made sure that when I was back. So I would not take half times, etc. I was back because my colleagues were also, and they also had families. And I think we also need to break a little bit the concept of that just women have families. Like, men have families as well, and they also have kids, and they also have, so I think that applies to everybody, and obviously women tend to sometimes get some benefits of that, and to be honest, that ends up being detrimental because people think that, now she only wants to work until 3, or now she only wants to work until 5. But, you know, every person needs to make that choice. My choice is obviously, for me, this is top priority. I'm not going to have, you know, obviously give up on my family for these, but when I'm back, I'm back.
Okay.
I don't compromise then the work part because of that. But to be honest, it's a personal option. But I don't think that is an obstacle per se. Well, it's our choices we need to make. But I think as managers, we all need to be more supportive of that and making sure that, you know, like you will not stop hiring that person because she might be having children in the next years, or that, you know, we need to think long term on these. Like, I don't think, like, even on the bonus thing, like you should just pay the bonus because, you know, like the person is not just this year, and maybe the performance was even good this year, right? You need to think on the long term, and I think that message is very important for employees as well, right? Okay,
yeah, I think. Okay, so I understand your point here, on that it's a mix of your priorities, your attitude, even though in the workplace sometimes there is things that are specific to gender. Okay, you get this maternity leave, you don't get the bonus, but you know, why don't we get the bonus? But because your commitment was to have a family, you took on this commitment because it was your priority. Okay, but perhaps also on the workplace there are things that could be perhaps different in terms, you know, to allow people that work actually for the performance of the company, even if they go on leave for maternity, they should perhaps be eligible for a bonus. Okay, so this is things that perhaps. Yeah,
but to be honest, that's also very specific to the role that I was performing. So I don't think either like that was a very specific thing, but I think we just need to make sure that we are obviously being fair. Yeah. Under that circumstance, and that, you know, because people were out for 4 months, not treat them as if they were out for, you know, 2 years, because it's not that long. And but on the other side, when you are going on a maternity leave, you also need to understand that your team is going to cover for your work, and you need to also have respect for that. You see, I think the fact that, for instance, me and my team, we were very close, gave me a lot of perspective over that. So I knew that they were taking my job over the time that I was out. And I certainly respected that and thanked a lot for that, because I knew that was obviously extra work on them. So.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for this perspective. The next point that we would like to discuss, and we're going to get to closure on the next questions, is you won the Women Entrepreneurship Award last year in 2020. Okay. Do you think, in terms of this award that was launched by the Católica Lisbon School of Business and Economics, do you think that we need to promote this type of events? Do you think this is helpful to raise awareness on the this perhaps and this is a fact in terms of the data? We have much less women entrepreneurs than male, and we have other data in terms of getting to funding, etc. How do you see this kind of prizes or contests or events in the community?
I think it's fantastic. Once obviously I was very pleased to win last year. I think it's super important. It's kind of that thing that you cannot be what you cannot see. So going back to role modeling and showing what other women are doing specifically, and that when you say that, obviously this award is a big credibility stamp, right? It's and that is very important, and it's something that women sometimes need more than men, right? You need to feel that you're being valued and that you are capable to the job, etc. So I think that obviously on one side, having that visibility, that exposure is super important. On the other side, it gives an opportunity for the women that participated as well to network, and that's something that I think women also need a lot, right? To network more between themselves and to get those learnings going, right? Because women, and I think when you go to entrepreneurship, is that men are more likely to, or I'm stereotyping of course, but to take risks and to even if they think they are not fully capable, they'll give it a try. And women are much more reserved to that, right? We always feel we are not ready enough, things that for entrepreneurship you will never be ready. So you cannot take that approach, because that's then you don't do it, and then it comes like, oh, okay, but then I want to have a baby, and then you just don't do it, right? Because then the timing was right and the timing was wrong, and then the timing is never right? So we need to certainly give a lot more exposure to women entrepreneurs and make them know each other more and give space for a lot more of knowledge sharing and experience.
I think also one point that we got and the feedback we got is about the impact it has in terms of role models.
Absolutely.
For example, having you and last year and the year before Joanna Rafael gives an idea to the community that being a woman, you can be successful entrepreneur, you can have a family, and you can do all these things, and it's not a path that up front could not be considered. It's something you can be successful, and I think providing the community with this example, with these role models, allows people to think, hey, if she's able to do it, I can perhaps also do it. It looks like cool to do it, and I think I would enjoy that. Okay, and this is one of the feedback we did about that. We got about that is the role models and the people that we put up front to the community to see what they have been achieving and where to the level that they get and the impact that they actually having on the community is something that I think was wow. I think is important for people.
It's very important. It is very important.
Yeah, it is. So I think we all have went through a lot of points about you, about your career, about your choices, about being a woman as an entrepreneur and changing from corporate to entrepreneurship. I have a last question for you, and the question is about like we do usually, is about advices. If you had to, I have a daughter. She's 14. Actually, she's Martha as well, but she has the H in the middle. So, and what would you give advice to specifically students and perhaps a little bit older, but female students in terms of starting their career, and what would you perhaps tell them that they should be considering and thinking of and doing?
I think to start you need to, and this is very hard I think early on, to really understand really what you love doing, your passion. It's very hard, and I think we also don't support people enough throughout the education to find their thing, what sparks them. Because then we start going to very cliche jobs, etc., and career path because we didn't enough. So I would say the best advice I would give is throughout university, experiment a lot. get exposure. Like internships are super important. Really go into the job, see what it's like, see if you see yourself doing that job, and not for the next 20 years. It's fine if you for the next 5, but if it's something that really sparks you, if the people are something that I think it's very, very important. The team you will be working for, you really need to enjoy the people you work with, because otherwise I find you will not obviously be able to put half of you into the job if you don't like it and you don't like or are inspired by the people. You really need to be inspired by it, especially in the early years of your career. You really need to be inspired by the people that are surrounding you, and they really need to, because they are there and they are really good at their job. They really need to make you want to learn so much more and go to the next stage. So and find a job that gives you a very high learning curve. There are jobs and jobs. I would say that at the start of your career, particularly, that's very important. Get a job that you don't want to be behind the desk forever and always doing the same thing. The fact that you need to be frequently put in uncomfortable situations and be out of your comfort zone, etc. It's very important skill to learn. So I would try that. But so to summarize, I would internships and try different things. Don't go like, I think I like finance. Try different roles, try different industries. Go and work in a startup, go and work in a corporate, go and work and find it out. And these days, I think now it's very different than it was for me, because universities now have a lot of clubs, a lot of things. When I was studying, this obviously didn't exist. But find your community, because I think when you go and you will understand, like, do I want to hang around with these people that are into finance or marketing or tech or something? But really find your tribe. I think
the tribe, yes.
The tribe thing is like when you, because that will unlock so many things. If you really like and you are interested in what you're doing and you really like the people you're surrounded with, I think 90% of the work is done, right? And you will enjoy it, and the growth will be very natural. Versus and if you don't like the job, obviously I will make a disclaimer, because I know these days sometimes people don't stick enough to like, and it's not like all jobs have a lot of things that you will not like. But once you really understood that this is not for me, cut the loss and move. Mm-hmm. Don't stick around for years.
Don't suffer.
Don't stick around for years in an industry or a company you clearly don't like, and it's clearly not something that is going to or should not be part of your personal future, because someone tells you, if you leave before 2 years, it's going to look bad on your CV or etc. Well, saying this, I'm not incentivizing anyone to, after 2 months you're not happy. Obviously, in every job there are a lot of things you will love and a lot of things that you will not love so much. But whenever you know that's not the path, cut the loss and move to the next thing.
I think your point on the internship is super important. I mean, we can see the differences with students that went through internships and the one that yet didn't go through that. I mean, it brings a sense of perspective, a sense of, what is, before you choose actually what you want to do, it allows you to test a little bit, how you integrate into the workplace, what people do, etc. So I also do share the fact that previous experience or internship are super important for the students, and I think they should do that even more than what they're doing currently.
Yeah. And also that part of networking, because internships is one, but then also the universities gives you such a big exposure to a pool of people. Make best use of that. So go and make questions. Really ask what they do, because a lot of times, people, especially like when I'm in banking, there are so many things people didn't really understand what the job was. So I think you really need to make concrete questions. What is your day to day? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why? And really understand, because if it's something that they're really interested about, then it will click, right? And when someone will tell you, when it clicks, this is something I should try doing, right?
Wow. Okay, excellent. So thanks a lot for the time. Very interesting answers in terms of your career, your life, getting a family, making some choices, reconsidering some choices in the middle of your career. I think it's very useful for people that are listening, and especially for our audience that are, students or young professionals. So
yeah.
I do thank you very much, Marta. Thanks for your time. Thanks for these insights. And I wish you all the best for you and your family in the next month and years.
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon.
Talk About Podcast.